Now, I'm sure many people are aware of the Chris Chan story of the past year, of a trans woman having a sexual relationship with her mother. So, isn't that a way to start off the video? But Chris Chan has a very complicated history on the internet, involving trolling, bigotry, and delusions, even having the odd reputation as the most documented person on the internet. But how did that happen? In this video, we're going to be looking at the history of Chris Chan. Now, before I do, I'm sure you probably noticed that Chris identifies as a transgender person. So, while talking about her past of Christian, I will refer to he/him pronouns. And when referring to their present identity, Christine, I will use she/her, as a way to keep things understandable and less confusing. Some people might disagree with this, but this is a common way I hear other people talk about them. Also, a lot of what makes Christian who they are, gender does kind of play a big role.
Girls and boys, and dudes of all teenagers, as well as the gals. My name is Christian Chandler. I am here, and y'all are there.
Chris Chan was born as Christopher Weston Chandler on February 24th, 1982, in Ruckersville, Virginia. That was until a birthday party where an animatronic bear mishears his name as Christian, and his parents went with that instead. Chris, thinking is a sign from God. Yeah, that's one way to start off someone's backstory. During her gender transition, it would be changed again to Christine Weston Chandler. Chris lived with his parents, Barbara and Robert Chandler. They had him at a very old age, so despite having numerous brothers and sisters, some barely related to him, they were all adults who were probably estranged from both of them. One of his well-known siblings being Cole Smithy, the film critic who was well known for decreasing Toy Story 3's 100% Rotten Tomatoes score. Chris was diagnosed with high-function autism. This led to many social problems throughout his life. His hobbies include video games, specifically the more cartoony ones from Nintendo, his most favorite being Sonic the Hedgehog and Pokemon. After graduation from high school, he had no social life. He continued to live with his parents with no interest in getting a job or a career. However, he did go to college, and even received an associate's for computer-aided drafting and design. However, he hasn't done anything with it for years. Instead, his passion was for creating comics, in a series he created called Sonichu, a crossover between Sonic and Pokemon, series that he held with pride, even going so far to make his own personal Sonichu merchandise, the most well-known being the Sonichu medallion he wore everywhere, being one of the many things that makes Chris Chan so recognizable, along with his odd-sounding voice, colorful shirts, and his different colored eye. However, by the time he was 25, he was eventually discovered on the internet by sites like Something Awful and 4chan, and what they saw was a bizarre but fascinating person.
I present this open message because I have a whole bunch of people on the internet give me hate. Show me a lot of hate.
You would later get a page on Encyclopedia Dramatica, a twisted troll version of Wikipedia, and that's kind of where things went south. His comic was a mess. People constantly criticized his comic for how poorly drawn it was. Nevertheless, a weird concept too. Chris heavily desired a girlfriend, calling himself a virgin with rage.
Tell me why I'm stuck as a virgin with rage. Tell me why I so need a cute girl my age. Tell me why I ain't ever wanna hear you say I have a boyfriend.
So much so that he would create advertisements for himself while he was in public areas, specifically on food courts in his local mall and community college, which landed him into some trouble. On the sign, he preferred his women to be thin and white. He was also very openly homophobic, and really despised the idea that people thinking he was gay.
And while I respect men in general, I hate the homos. I'm straight, and nothing is going to change that.
This became a very easy target for ridicule, with many making art of Chris being gay or drawing his female characters with huge dicks. Now I must emphasize, his hatred for homosexuals only extends to gay men. Chris seems to be okay with lesbian relationships, and maybe bisexual. And this is where many people felt that trolling was a little virtuous, like putting a homophobe in his place. As Chris may appear to be dumber the more we learn about him, a lot of his rants really appear to be quite hate-fueled. He appeared as a total unlikable bigot.
I write this letter today with concern of hearing that the homosexual population wear the rectify spray as often as or greater than the straight people, like myself. For the longest time, acts have been advertised and meant for straight men to attract women. It was certainly not meant to attract other dudes.
Chris was high-functioning autistic, and he used it as an excuse for his actions. There were many who saw that Chris made all autistic people look terrible, not just by his own behavior, but also includes things like living off the money he received from the government. This leads to another vice that he has, which includes his compulsive buying. In a way, he's somewhat of a video game collector. See, Chris cares a lot about the brands he follows. Let's just say he believes the phrase, vote with your wallet. For instance, he was a huge Sony fanboy, so as a way to support the business, he would buy tons of games for the PSN network, even games he haven't played or touched. All this under the belief that he was supporting Sony. Since he's doing this with taxpayer dollars, it really takes vote with your wallet in a totally different level. By the way, he really hated Xbox. Now, while his comic was weird enough, so were his aspirations behind it. Sonichu wasn't meant to be just a fan comic. He wanted this published by Nintendo or Sega, something that's extremely unrealistic, especially for someone his age. Due to Chris's odd belief on the comic, many people posed as Miyamoto, Reggie, and Vanessa Hudson, all to mock his odd delusion.
Ohio, Mr. Miyamoto-san.
Part of the reason why Chris refused to get a job or do something with his cat associates, one must remember that in Chris's mind, Sonichu is the job. So there's really no need to go any further. Even for artists, that's fairly unrealistic. And I don't believe he actually made any money off the comics themselves. And despite having pride in his work, he did very little of it.
And I will draw more comics when I get some positive inspiration or when I feel like it. After all, everybody has a life, so do I. I have a life.
And Chris didn't have a lot of excuses either. He wasn't some naive, dumb teenager. He was high-functioning autistic, and many of them are not this inept. Like I said, many autistic people felt insulted by his existence. Unlike many other cringe targets, it wasn't just an embarrassing online presence, or even a single act that led to an embarrassing moment. It seems that Chris's entire life was cringe, and that what makes him different than other similar figures, which led to a lot of curiosity on what exactly is up with him. So, what about this Sonichu comic? What was even in it in the first place? The art is very terrible. It looks like a kindergartner drew it. And no, it does not get any better. The one positive thing he does do is type in the text, having some self-awareness that his handwriting could be very hard to read. The main characters of this comic include the fictionalized version of Chris Chan, where he's drawn a lot more thinner than he is in real life, as well as the title character, Sonichu, and his girlfriend, Rouges. Chris Chan in this comic is the mayor of Quickville, a city named after his initials, Chris and Weston Chandler. And despite being the mayor, he has the same ambition as the real Chris, and his never-ending quest to get a girlfriend. There's also a group of characters called the Chaotic Combo, each with different color and type. However, out of all of them, it is Maddie Chan who has the most importance. He is the most utilized of the five because of his psychic powers, practically being a force main character. He is trained by Mewtwo, who only really appears in his backstory. Keep some of this in mind, this will be important later. Sonichu, oddly enough, is more of a side character. While Sonichu is a crossover between Sonic and Pokemon, it's actually more about Chris fulfilling his revenge fantasies on the people that wronged him in real life. The main villain of the series is Mary Lee Walsh, who is based on the real-life Mary Lee Walsh, the dean from his former college. He had such a hatred for her because she tore his love advertisement sign thing, while also saying that you won't get a girlfriend this way or any other way. Chris has sworn revenge since. But there were other villains like this. There's a minor villain character based on Chris Chan's cat professor, and there's also the Jerk-Offs, who are based on the mall security removing Chris from the premises due to his love advertisement. I also think his hatred for the mall security extends to the justice system in general, and there are also villains based on numerous trolls as they come and go. You know that horror movie trope where a teacher shows a parent a disturbing drawing their kid drew? Well, Sonichu was kind of like that. This is also done to the love interest too. One of the more well-known characters being Megan, who was his love interest in the early part of the comic. She was his only female friend at the time, but the friendship ended sour. Long story short, he drew porn of her. There are also multiple other different girlfriends he has throughout the comic too who turned out to be female trolls. There are no actual fans of this comic. They're all trolls, and is quite secondary when focusing on Chris. And I'm sure there's a few people who follow the Chris Chan story who haven't even read the comic at all. While the comic itself may be very bland, Chris and Weston Chandler as a person is less so. Chris Chan's life is like a car crash you just can't look away. As the more attention he got, the weirder the facts are we find out about it. As internet culture morphed, Chris ended up being the first for a lot of things. Some people think he's the first Let's Player, even being the first brony, and to some extent, he was also the first incel. Chris having a dramatic page on his own isn't very uncommon. Back in the day, other cringe figures and infamous e-celebrities had them. He is seen as the weirdest among all of them. Chris also attained a fairly sizable Rouges gallery of trolls. Best known as the main antagonist for Chris Chan was Clyde Cash.
Or even worse, all that Clyde Cash, I will buy his lights out.
Doing so because his brother, quote-unquote, killed himself when Chris decided to stop the comics. And Chris responded very poorly.
Gee, so much power. That's a lot worse than when that child locked himself in the room after seeing Optimus Prime die in the original movie. And then also on the PlayStation Network.
And Clyde Cash has been seen as the main antagonist since. And there's Alec Benson Larry, who rivals Sonichu with his own comic, Asperchu, which was better drawn and was a lot more positive for the LGBT community. It's called Asperchu because Chris had a prejudice against people with Asperger's syndrome. Chris Chan drew Alec and his friends in his comic, with his character killing him in very brutal ways. But the most infamous and lovable is Liquid Chris.
It's come to my attention that a troll claiming to be me, the real Christian Weston Chandler, has posted fake, defamatory, and lying and false videos on my former channel. I am the true and honest mayor of Quickville. Y'all know that. I have just been dealing with so much stress.
A Chad version of Chris who claimed to be the real Chris Chan, while claiming the Chris we all know is actually a fake the entire time.
My name is not Ian Brandon something! I am Christian Weston Chandler! So get it through your damn fucking skull!
Not only was this so bizarre and hilarious, this also led to another arc of trolls such as Casey, Liquid's girlfriend, and her father, Matthew, who I'm pretty sure is just Liquid. I could be wrong on this.
Hello?
Hey Chris, it's Casey.
Hi, Casey. How are you?
Casey tried their best to help Chris put his life back on track, but he never took her advice. Leading into the most climactic part of this arc, the father call.
Hello, Chris. This is Matthew, Casey's father.
Where Casey's father goes through every negative aspect of Chris's lifestyle.
You're just sitting around in your parents' house, crying about your little dog, playing video games, whining about women on the internet. Some lazy little maggots.
I am not lazy.
You're living with your parents and you don't have a job. How is that not lazy?
Well, maybe I don't have a job, but I do work around the house. I lift a whole bunch of...
I do those every day, and I'm retired.
Maybe everyone works around the house, but they don't... But they differ from burden to heavy weight. I work hard for my father in his garden. I pulled weeds. Those weeds are very hard to pull.
My grandma pulled weeds.
Oh, come on. You should
Come
be.
on. You know who You know who you're talking to, son? What the fuck is this? I mean, now you're just talking back to me like a little kid. Don't yell at me, you maggot. Piece of shit. This is just ridiculous. I can't believe I'm talking to someone who's so naive.
You just crossed a line. That is like the worst insult to
What
me.
line? What are you gonna do about it?
Nothing at the moment.
Nothing at the moment.
Because I can't really do anything. I'm not right there in front of you now, am I?
Wait a minute. Are you trying to threaten me? You trying to threaten an ex-Marine?
It is more than an hour long, but it's really an intense wake-up call to Chris, though I think it ended up being quite unhelpful. Many others try to help Chris like this, but they always ended in failure. Then there's the false girlfriends, and there is many of them, like Ivy, Panda Halo, Bianca, Casey, Julie, and many others. Typically, they will pretend to be interested in Chris. Some might meet up face-to-face. Then they would leak some of their DMs online, and usually end up getting killed off by Clyde Cash or a fake suicide. Some of them might not even be girls at all. A lot of these extremes were done to get a proper reaction from Chris.
I hope you don't do anything stupid. I pray you're still alive and well. Because if you committed suicide or hurt yourself because of my actions, I feel terrible.
Chris just forgets about them and quickly moves on to some other woman, to the point of it being kinda concerning. And you wouldn't see this type of trolling done to other cringe figures or Sonic fans. At least not this organized. Many of these operations might have been based around a short story on the Sonichu comic, where a girl outside the internet did pretend to be interested in Chris, and only really did it to make fun of him. Another thing these female trolls would do is tell Chris to post these really weird sex videos, some of them being fairly degrading. The most infamous was when he drinks his own semen with Fanta as a way to recycle it. In hindsight, it's pretty awful. Like, who's weirder, the person doing the weird acts, or the person asking for them? After all, Chris thinks his love quest is over, and he thinks these girls are into some kinky stuff. So, is it really fair to shame Chris? And plus, it was all meant to be private. And like, isn't this technically revenge porn? It was all cruel and unethical. And what was even the reason? Sonichu shit? I don't know too much about the law, but maybe Chris could have lawyered up or something. This would have been a good true crime story. But it's a little too late now. I think a lot of this was done as a way to teach this creepy guy a lesson, but what's more worse? Giving Chris more fake girlfriends, given no time to change or reflect on his past actions? Or send him to the lion's den, or lioness den, to real women who would probably be disgusted by his behavior and reject him outright. Now, the latter may sound harsh, but I think it might bring more positive results than whatever these trolls were doing. And it should be known this is way before this whole nice guy red pill incel stuff was a huge focus. This happened around 2008 and 9 or something. I also get the impression that the idea of catfishing incels these days has bad idea written all over it. While thankfully Chris is non-violent, there is reports that Chris was rather touchy-feely with the women he met face-to-face.
You know, her sister said you kept trying to touch her when you met her.
Because I was nervous at the time.
You were nervous? What the hell kind of response is that? You're nervous, so you try to touch a girl? What the hell? That's just sick. I mean, that's my daughter. You're trying to touch a girl. You're trying to touch my daughter because you're nervous. I mean, most people try to avoid touching people when they're nervous. God, I can't believe I just heard that. I should come and kick your ass right now.
And there were the people who Chris viewed as enemies who were just normal people. Just like many of the people I listed in the comic section. One of the more reoccurring was Michael Snyder, the owner of the game place, Chris Chan's old hangout. He was kicked out for making the customers feel uncomfortable, even being racist for some of the kids. He tried to come back years later saying that he changed. After being rejected, he just called Snyder a Jew. You know that cartoon trope where a character throws stars of a picture of their enemy? Well, Chris was trying to do that IRL, but he needed a picture. Long story short, he made himself look like a creeper, and tried to run him over with his car. Put it this way, Michael Snyder is pretty much the lawyer of Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
If it isn't the big-time, hot-shot lawyer man.
Oh my God. I do not have time for you.
There's a lot of gray areas, but there were some really funny moments, like a man in the pickle suit cock-blocking Chris on his date. Then you have the darker moments, like with Blue Spike, who was a 13-year-old boy, and forced Chris to shove a Sonichu down up his ass, so he could get back his PS3, something he probably put tons of government dollars into, and then revealed to Chris that he was catfishing him as an adult woman named Julie, someone who Chris had phone sex with prior. Many don't see Chris as a predator during all this, but this did corrupt Clyde Cash in my eyes, and I don't think this was the best way to help Chris's compulsive buying. While it does seem nice to justify all this because he was an incel or homophobe, all of this is done because Chris is just too dumb and easy to fool. So I think it's pretty clear what's really going on here. And while I think none of them intended to get this out of control, none of these trolls are really that virtuous people like to make them out to be. So, all that being said, how exactly did Chris Chan get the reputation of being the most documented person on the internet? Well, nowadays, everything has a Wikia. I mean, you can't have a page of every single Power Ranger on Wikipedia, right? And Sonichu is no exception. Well, kinda. While there is a lot of stuff surrounding the comic, it mostly focuses on Chris and his misadventures throughout his life. Which also means there's an entire Wikipedia surrounding one single person. And a lot of it contains some very personal information, ranging from family photos to private emails. Like, I'm watching the Chris Chan documentary. Why the hell are they talking about high school papers? Like, did some troll ask for that? Like, who in the right mind thinks, wow, this guy sucks, I wonder what his high school worksheets were like? Where did so much information come from this person? Like, how did people even know about that animatronic bear store from the beginning of the video? Now, I set this video up thinking a lot of it had to do with trolls being sneaky and getting this information themselves, right? Well, yes and no. There was a personal DVD of Chris that documented his own appearances on TV. One of these sections includes a slideshow showing his childhood pictures, from him as a baby to him in high school. However, he would usually give it to people he knew personally. But one of the trolls pretended to be his childhood friend. But wait, where did people find out about her? And that gets to the no part. You see, Chris has a very poor habit of giving too much information. For instance, he once had an argument with Clyde Cash, accusing him of cross-dressing. So what does Chris do? Say he has dirty crap briefs.
Say it at parties, family get-togethers, whatever. Just sit back and enjoy some of the most awkward expressions you've ever seen in your entire life.
And this attitude is taken to a whole new level when he ran his own Wikia. You see, there's a Quickie, the well-known Wikia ran by trolls documenting his entire life. Now, the Wikipedia is a wiki made by Chris himself. That puts him in a positive light for him and his fans. It didn't last very long, and there are very little archives of it. There was a lot of drama regarding the site running gay ads. Yeah, trolls took over that site too. Which contains most of the stuff in the DVD. So yes, there were people actively seeking stuff on Chris, but the majority of the information were already put out by him. The Wikia contained many of the family pictures from the DVD, along with other personal information, and including a list of the girls he was interested in. All the troll Quickie did was re-record everything that was posted, and use them for their own narrative. Now that makes sense. Kind of. But what about the God Bear thing? Oh, well, the details of that were sent in a freakout video.
I call me a real name that a God has been given to me, and the bear at Regency Square Shopping Center during 1989. You damn fucking bastards!
So, yeah, checks out. Then there were the worksheets, which I assume were sent out by Chris's Wikia. There was a thing where Chris Chan liked to be called Ricardo because of some Spanish class he took or something, but many of them were actually stolen from his garbage after a fire. Like I said, this was pretty recent, and many people saw this was stupid too. But what about those email leaks? What was up with those? As expected, Chris gets hacked a lot. though it primarily happens on his PS3, but most of it is mundane information. The exception being the time his AOL email was hacked. But there's not a lot of information on who did it. The AOL leak was more notable for including conversations with Megan and his brother Cole. People were more interested in the former, because it shows more detail on how Chris ruined his friendship in the worst way possible. And that's where a lot of the more sensitive information comes from, as many of the other stuff could be found on the surface level. You see, Chris Chan was a blogger, with hundreds of videos talking about his life. And along with the comic, there was also the mailbag, where he responds to questions from his quote-unquote fans and haters. Pretty much a Q&A. And then there's the leak the trolls sent out, as well as the hacking and Chris's on Wikipedia, and as a Queekie carefully organizes all this information, this gives Chris a very weird reputation of being the most documented person on the internet. Many people see the Chris Chan story as a real-life version of The Truman Show. In the movie, everything about Jim Carrey's character is filmed since birth, so Chris may not apply. Now, more literally, it does apply to family vloggers and maybe some streamers. Some with children with their whole entire life on camera. They are called Truman babies after all. But what's more interesting, a generic family vlogger or this fucking weirdo? If anything, it's just very strange how organized the wiki is cited. So that aspect may not completely apply to Chris, but his relationships with other people ironically do. Throughout the movie, all of Truman's relationships have been one huge lie. His friends are fake, and even his wife is fake. Something that unfortunately mirrors Chris's relationship with many of his trolls. In October 2010, Chris took a break from the internet and deleted all his videos.
Online socialization is a bust. Socialize in real life is the tops.
It's been a very eventful 3 to 4 years since people found out about Chris. So this is the end, right? Well, it's not. Technically. The Chris Chan I've been talking about throughout this video has changed drastically. In 2011, he came back. Rather, she came back.
Attention, citizens of the internet. I am making a return. Y'all should know me by now, if in case you don't. I am Weston Chandler, the original creator of Sonichu and Rouges and the Electric Hedgehog Pokemon.
Chris came back identifying as a tomgirl. And just like the autism aspect with Chris, many people do not want Chris considered trans, mostly due to embarrassment and or questionable motives. Chris's father, Bob, passed away due to heart failure in September 2011, and it was a sad day for everyone involved in the story of Chris Chan. It's also changed how people focus and talked about Chris Chan in general. Because after all this, the story of Chris Chan became more tragic than funny. It's even to a point where a lot of stuff I talked about, many people kind of forgot. The status quo has changed drastically since Bob died. Chris kept up this tomgirl attitude till present day, eventually identifying as Christine Weston Chandler. This meant that Chris identified as a woman for over a decade now. Many of Christine's older homophobic views also seem to change. Well, slowly. She believed in the LBT at one point, but that changed. And the whole virgin aspect is gone too, because, well, Chris actually did get laid by a prostitute. One of the many things that held her back the entire time was her Christianity. But by this point, she just flipped the table and said, fuck it. These changes meant that Chris's uglier side kind of faded away. Not saying they're gone entirely, absolutely not. But they're not as big of a focus as they were before. And all things considered, Chris also gained some infamy due to her past, and gained the reputation as the most documented person ever. And it may be more unrealistic for Chris to get a proper job or career. Imagine being an employer and looking this person up. Not to mention all the trolls that could ruin that prospect. And with how long this has been going on, many people just gave up and considered Chris a lost cause. However, there's still a lot of attention on Chris and her bizarre antics. Chris got massive attention for getting arrested by protesting Sonic Boom, because the redesign gave him blue arms. Ironically enough, Chris actually did get Sega's attention by making her into a strawman character in the TV show. This situation worried a lot of people because it raised the question what would happen if Chris went to prison. Then later on, Chris's house burned down, because apparently there was a coffee machine hooked to the bathroom, which can be very disastrous considering the family's history of hoarding. The sonic boom situation wasn't the only thing Chris got in trouble for. Chris tries to reason with Michael Snyder again. This time, she brought her mother, Barbara. They ran him over again.
Uh-oh. How did you get in here?
Meanwhile, it appears that Christine is losing her grip on reality. She thinks dimensions will merge and make fan characters real or some other kin nonsense. She also believes she's a CPU from the Commodore 64 or something. The other reason why she refuses to work now is because she thinks she's a goddess in another dimension. So remember that stuff I said about Magi-chan? Well, thanks to Chris's belief in the dimensional merge, they are married. Yeah. But not just Magi-chan, but so is his love interest, Sylvana Rouges. There are moments where Chris portrays a Sonichu character as being her son, and I guess that makes sense, considering Sonichu was made by Chris. But that belief doesn't seem to apply to the other characters, Magi-chan included. And before I get people confused, I am not talking about the fictionalized version of Chris Chan. I'm talking about the real Chris Chan. Remember Mewtwo? Well, turns out she's also married to him as well. Chris Chan thinks she's married to Mewtwo. Now, the question is, which one? Well, I don't know. I think I'm putting more thought than she did. But it's at least the Mewtwo from the Detective Pikachu movie. What was once laughter now becomes concern. And it's at this point where trolling Chris Chan just feels wrong. Chris's infamy led her to get paranoid over trolls stalking her in real life. And it's just upsetting to see. And there are still people pretending to have connections to the game industry too. And then there's the idea guys. People who exploit the dimensional merge to troll her or get money. I'm sure many who followed the Chris Chan story from the start noticed a darker change. To the point where they just stopped following her. Only until things like the sonic boom stuff with the house burning town gets talked about. I know I did since Bob passed away. But while the people watching might have changed their views, it appears that Chris's social circle is mostly the same. Christine still has plenty of trolls hovering around her. People still leaking stuff, convince her to do weird videos, and false female friends. And it only gets worse from there.
A YouTube personality called Chris Chan has just been arrested in Virginia on, of all things, incest charges. Authorities say Chan was having sex with his 79-year-old mother who has dementia.
And there are a few cringe figures said to be worse than Chris, usually for having been exposed as pedophiles. The best known example being Nick Bate, who was a really weird guy who likes to eat his own shit, and bragged about molesting his half-sister. He was later arrested. Then you have this other guy named Jonathan Ross, who was criminally stupid. He would scream like a banshee when things didn't go his way. And remember that wormhole exposed thing on YouTube? Well, that's his porn collection. And it's just so disappointing to see Chris Chan in that same ballpark. Chris Chan was the king/queen of Lolcows. But did people even like Chris Chan? Well, that's a very complicated question. People may not like her or her comic, but I don't think a lot of people hated Chris Chan either. Chris Chan wasn't malicious or evil. Maybe a little dumb. Okay, maybe really dumb. Okay, borderline fucking retarded. It's pretty clear from the quickie that Chris was a product of her environment. And I think many people realize that now, and that's part of the tragedy. With many of her prejudice coming from her parents, which gave Chris a lot of distress regarding their sexuality. Sometimes accepting yourself isn't that easy for some people. Sure, it was cool that Bob cut down the internet that one time. Chris was masturbating in the kitchen after all, but the way Bob and Barbara treated Chris just felt off. Like they thought autism was synonymous for being brain dead or something. Like she was a lost cause from day one. How come they didn't motivate her to get a proper career? Or at least do something with that CAD degree? Why did they let her focus so much on Sonichu? Then there's Chris's interactions with women. Maybe Bob or Barbara should've. Actually, never mind. It seems that everyone forgot how to talk to women these days, so I don't think that would've mattered. But I think we could all agree that this was a stupid idea. He's just a modern-day version of the village idiot. Which makes the whole situation with Barbara all the more frightening. I don't know, man. Fuck. There's a term that's thrown around called A-log. It was based on a Chris Chan hater used to describe people who project their own insecurities to the point of hating Chris, which, at the time, was uncalled for. But I do think that to an extent, many people focus on Chris have their own insecurities. Maybe they too also have some childish interests like Sonic or Pokemon and feel very ashamed about it. Maybe they themselves have social anxiety and don't really know how to make friends too well, let alone get a girlfriend. Maybe some of them are on the spectrum and are too worried about upsetting the unforgiving internet. And maybe even some of them live with their parents in an embarrassing age because, millennial shit. And then they look at someone like Chris and think to themselves, well, at least I'm not like that person. Maybe not all of them, but I do think a good majority. Condone them or hate them, the legacy of Chris Chan will never be forgotten. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want, you can see some of my other content. Stay safe. Hope to see you soon.
Oh, FYI, I'm God, by the way.